Chapter 11. Over the centuries, there have been many truths that have been hidden, destroyed, and manipulated. As humanity moves into an era of unity, peace, and collaboration together as a species, there will be a flow to life. Money will no longer matter. Money is currently a very large piece of human identity now. It is important for many to make money, hold on to money, and spend money on more and more things. This accumulation clogs up the mind and heart. Where humans are moving to, there is no saving or preparing for the future, or thinking of the past. It is this one moment, right here and right now, that matters the most. This is where humanity is going, to be in the moment of now, and to release the dogma effect of what has been ingrained into every soul until this point. Over the next few years, there will be massive change. As we have mentioned in the first book, banks, schools, the healthcare system, and the ones that rule over you now will be completely changed. There will be a rising for the blinders to come off, and many, many humans will want immediate change. Humans have the capacity for this to happen, and it will happen. Change for the better. Alexandria. We move into our next memory of old, a memory of Alexandria. Alexandria was a woman who ruled over Rome with ruthlessness like no other. This memory begins in the middle of her life. Up to this point, greed and power had overtaken Alexandria. She was a mastermind of unconscionable acts. For a length of time, she was feeling superior over all others and had visions of overtaking all the lands. Alexandria was going to create wars and destruction of great length to continue to fuel her power. No one was going to stop her until one fateful night. Alexandria drank her golden milk before going to sleep. Her pet tiger lying by the foot of her bed, chained in her bedroom. As she drifted off to sleep with her mind preparing to overtake the world, she left her body. Alexandria was in darkness. She was at peace and felt calm. This was like no other place she had been to before, one her mind could not comprehend. A beam of light came forward, with angelic white light surrounding them, and crystalline light orbs swirling and dancing all around. Immediately, this brought Alexandria to tears. She knew where she was. Alexandria had crossed the threshold to the other side, and this was her time of reckoning. She began to plead for mercy and make excuses for what she had done and become. This is when a great flash of light surrounded her, and she felt love. She felt everything was and is in its rightful place. Communication came inside of her, letting her know it was not too late to change her ways. She could help a great number of people during her time left on Earth. However, it was up to her and how she would proceed. Alexandria began to see timelines flash in front of her eyes. She saw every decision she made that affected others, every word, every conviction. Alexandria experienced the cruelty she placed on others, including her tiger. She got the message. She saw how power and greed had overtaken her. Everything, in a matter of seconds, became crystal clear to her. She wanted none of what she had created. She felt ashamed, and regret washed over her. As soon as those feelings rose in Alexandria, immediately they were wrapped in love. This feeling of love is so great that humans cannot understand the depth and magnitude of this vibration unless they have crossed over. Alexandria wanted to go back to prove to herself and this being of light that there is another way. She was also very aware of the others that wanted to take her place. If she went back, she would be a changed person. She knew the risk she was taking. She could be killed or taken over by others. There was a plan already forming in Alexandria's mind on how she could rule with awareness and balance for all. When Alexandria's mind wandered off forming this plan, she awoke in her bed. Sadness erupted through her heart in leaving the space of love behind with this being of light. She immediately called for her confidant, her sister, to be awoken. When Aertha came in, she could see her sister was not well. Alexandria's tiger was gone, and her sister's face was drained of all color. Alexandria began to speak erratically about her vision and asked for her sister's help. She needed guidance on how they could change their city and their world altogether. Aertha was shocked. As little girls, they laughed and played together. However, when Alexandria was groomed to become a leader, deceit and darker ways evolved into Alexandria's essence. Aertha could see her sister was breaking down as she awakened from the cloak of illusion. Alexandria told Aertha of having sent her tiger back just moments ago, back to the jungles where he was captured. She was distraught at having such a magnificent creature chained and not in its natural habitat. Aertha held Alexandria as her sister spoke of the inconceivable acts she approved. She was inconsolable. This was not the sister Aertha knew. Alexandria was heartless and deceitful. Her stare could make anyone cower in sheer terror. She remained in power because Alexandria had mastered fear and control over all others. The earth at this time was manipulated by men, and it was only by a grand design of their fathers that Alexandria came to rule. Time and time again, men ruled this city to only succumb to their death. Either a lord was trying to take over, control, or an assassin was hired to take out the leader. Alexandria's father thought long ago about how this might change if a woman was at the helm. The idea was then seeded for him to raise one of his daughters with the eye of deceit and manipulation, for her to marry the ruler and take over one day with Alexandria's father and his council leading behind the scenes. When Alexandria was of age, she married the warlord, the leader of Rome, at the request of her father. A few years later, Alexandria's father arranged his death. On the warlord's deathbed, Alexandria's father commanded that his beloved daughter become the next ruler of Rome. It wasn't until her husband's death that Alexandria found out about her father's plan. In her training and who she had now become, she ordered the death of her father and his council to be hung in the center of Rome for all to see. This was the turning point for Alexandria, where power and control took over. A ripple of fear greater than ever before was moved throughout the city and distant lands. The people knew of their fate if they turned on Alexandria. This was how Alexandria's power rose. With this newly founded power, she knew she needed her own council of brutality and cutthroat decision-making that would bring the city to its knees. This memory that Alexandria recalled brought on harder sobs of distress while Aertha held her sister. A few hours later, Alexandria fell asleep with her sister watching over her. Aertha knew she must aid her sister as Alexandria continued to integrate her experience, for it would be a challenge for her sister to portray her old self, while she was a completely different person on the inside. All the while, there was already a plot to undermine Alexandria and throw her from the throne. Power has been a continual battle throughout the ages on Earth, and continues to be as the gap becomes larger and larger between the wealthy and the poor. She awoke after having had a deep sleep. Her soul now seemed at peace with where she was headed. For Alexandria, time was of the essence. With her sister by her side, she knew she must make changes, and quickly. Eartha and Alexandria secretly met with a few trusted advisors and told them of their plan of change. No more taxes on the poor, balanced opportunities for all, and much less harsh sentences for the smallest of discordances. This is where Alexandria would start, little by little, and in a few months' time, she was hoping to see positive change. News traveled fast of 2 men that were to be hanged for stealing food, and their sentence at the last minute was now to help in the kitchens and the farmers in the fields. Sentences continued to be lessened or abolished altogether. With this one change, there was less fear in Rome. Alexandria's demeanor also changed. She could only cloak her true personality for so long. She began to show compassion, ruling with strength and adversity. Newfound respect grew within Alexandria's new way of leading. It was one of consideration and truly listening to what her constituents needed. Alexandria felt alive and energy thrumming through her body. Each day was exciting to make the city renewed and balanced. Yes, she knew of the danger that she was in. Her life could be short-lived, as growing hatred grew towards her, with Alexandria's now very different views on how to govern. Eartha and Alexandria and her trusted council had spies located everywhere. They wanted to know what others were saying about the changes, and know of any new talk of leadership in the wings. They soon found out that a conspiracy theory came forward that Alexandria was not fit to rule, for she was a woman with an unsound mind, and could not handle the decisions that a man could make, even though only months before her rulings were feared. Now that she was a changed soul, with compassion for each soul, the tides had turned against her. Alexandria knew her time was limited, and within the next few days, she was arrested and tried for insanity. There was account after account from lords that came forward to attest that she was a changed person. They said she had a demon inside of her, making new rules for the land and its people. Eartha silently hid in a back room while her sister was condemned for her newfound way of life. She quietly went out the back door to a horse that was waiting for her and fled. Alexandria had a plan to get Eartha out of the city as soon as anything happened to her. They managed to say their heartfelt goodbyes as soon as they heard talk of a new leader. Alexandria knew what was waiting for her on the other side, and was grateful for the changes she had made. Even if all the governing laws would go back to how it once was, she hoped some people would remember that there was another way, where every soul has a chance to live an abundant and successful life with happiness, love, and fulfillment. Alexandria was hanged the next day. Crowds of people came from all over the city to watch Alexandria's death, and many took it upon themselves to yell and throw food at her. As the noose wrapped around Alexandria's neck, she left her body. She watched the stool be knocked out from under her feet and saw the men and women yelling obscenities at her. Deep compassion rose within her being for each one of them. If they could only feel what she was feeling in this moment and know the truth of all that is. Alexandria was given a second chance to do better, and she did for the time that she was given. Alexandria's soul moved through the clouds to a tunnel of white light, where the being of light was waiting for her and surrounded her in love. This memory that we share with you was concealed and destroyed to continue the distortion of women during this time. Women are of equal balance to men, and there will be an upheaval in the roles that women play in the coming years. Many men in future generations will decide to stay at home, spending time with their children, cooking and cleaning as the women go to work. The shift is upon humans now with equality in the roles of family life and as a species as a whole. There will no longer be the patriarch of men, working and making money. There is much to be dismantled and renewed once again. This will happen, and a new release on life will be had by all. Elijah and Moses. Our next story goes back to biblical times. The same Bible that you read in today's times is not the same book that was originally written. The current Bible has been manipulated and rewritten so many times. It is an atrocity that this still exists, and humans follow or believe what is written. The original Bible communicated words of love through stories and verses that were meant to inspire and live by. The Bible now is a dictation of shoulds and should nots on how to live one's life. We begin this memory with a boy named Elijah, a shepherd boy who loved to daydream. It was one morning when Elijah was sitting on the edge of a cliff, overlooking his flock of sheep, that he asked God to give him 3 gifts. Elijah decided he was going to be God's servant, and in return, he asked for 3 gifts that would serve Elijah well. The overcast sky opened in front of Elijah, with rays of light shining through the clouds. And Elijah took this as a sign that this would be presented to him. Elijah happily skipped down the hill and began to tell anyone who would listen that God is good. Listen to God. God knows all and will provide you with goodwill and good fortune. At this moment, a man named Moses came to see Elijah. Moses was an older man with long white hair and a staff in one hand. Moses was known as the elder in Elijah's community and spoke often of God and the ways of the world. Moses met with Elijah and spoke to him in a kind but stern voice. Elijah, God knows what you are doing. Speak from your heart. Speak your truth. Right now, you are seeking gifts. There is no validity in what you say. Words hold energy. They hold truth. Know in your own heart if the words you speak are true or not. Elijah could not grasp the meaning of wisdom that Moses bespoke of. He felt he was doing good by praising God, and in doing so, he would receive his gifts. However, months passed with Elijah spreading the word of God, his praise onto every ear that passed him by, and Elijah began to get tired of his words. His gifts had not come, and he began to wonder what he was doing and for what. Elijah decided to make his way back up the hill to where he first asked God for his gifts, and a new plan emerged. This time Elijah didn't want any gifts at all. He wanted to hear God's voice. He wanted recognition that he had been heard. He receded his offer to God and asked to hear his voice or be shown a sign that God was listening to him. Elijah was thinking about what sign he would like when the clouds moved in once again and rays of light shone out in every direction. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Elijah saw the breathtaking scene before him, but did not want this as a sign. He wanted a bigger sign where everyone could see that God was talking to him. He asked God for rain, huge amounts of rain in their now dry season. Elijah wanted recognition from the farmers and the community for saving the day by asking for water for their crops and for them all to have enough food to be stored throughout their winter. God and Moses came up with a plan to help Elijah with a lesson. The rains would come, However, these would be catastrophic, rains that could ruin the crops and lands. Elijah was elated when the rains began, and many people in his community were also happy and joyous as it rained. Their joy, however, was short-lived when the rain did not stop. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Elijah was nervous and began to fear for his community. He did not mean any harm to come to the farmer's fields. He just wanted to be recognized and revered. On the 40th night, Moses came to Elijah. Elijah had remembered Moses helping him once before, even though he didn't know the extent of what Moses was talking about. Now Moses stood before him with grave concern on his face. "Elijah, what do you seek, my boy?" Elijah was taken aback. Wasn't it simple? He wanted to know, was there a God? He wanted to be heard. And Elijah stopped. Elijah, more than anything, wanted to believe in something far greater than himself. For if he did that, the being that was greater than he could take the blame when things didn't work out. He would be able to put all of his concerns and worries on something else, taking away the responsibility for himself and his own actions. With this epiphany, a ray of sunshine entered Elijah's mind and cleared all the clouds away. Elijah finally understood. It was Elijah himself that he needed to believe in. When he has faith in himself and loves himself, anything is possible. Yes, he could believe in a God if he wanted to, but never take away the power of what he could do, accomplish, and be. Never again was he going to give his power away to another. Moses smiled down at Elijah. "Well done, Elijah, well done." Moses began to walk away, and Elijah ran up to him. "Moses, what is this all for? What is the point?" Moses stopped and turned to Elijah. "It is to learn, Elijah. Your life here, as it is for all humans on this planet, is for a very short amount of time. Each soul has experiences within the heart that you learn and grow from. Many souls line up to be on earth, Elijah. It is a gift to learn the depths of emotions that one feels here." Elijah still had many questions. Why did God put me through this lesson and the potential of harm to my people and our crops? What was the point in that, Moses? Moses smiled and said, "Elijah, this was not to harm another soul or make life any more difficult than it already is. This is to show you how powerful you are, Elijah, how every living soul is powerful. If it rained one night less, you would not have believed this to be a sign. If it rained for one more day, it would have ruined the winter crops. You, my boy, know in your heart that this was a lesson for you and you alone. Be mindful of your thoughts. You can achieve a great many things in your life, Elijah. It is to believe in oneself and to love. Love all beings, creatures great and small, everything that exists in the universe. This knowledge changes everything." With that, Moses turned, and the heavy skies began to lift. The air was hot, muggy, and humid. The crickets were chirping in the air, and Elijah sat alongside the road, on a rock in the mud, taking in Moses' wisdom. It took Elijah many years to understand the depth of what Moses had said, and to put it into practice in his life. When Elijah did incorporate this knowledge, life became magical, lighter, and happier. Elijah wanted to shout out from the rooftops, "This is what you can do to help your life." However, the humans followed like sheep, doing what others told them to do. They followed the governed rules and continued day in and day out to live their lives with barely making it by, not having much joy in their own lives. Elijah made the decision to start to teach in small groups and talk about what he learned in practical ways that others could understand. This was Elijah's gift to the world. He continued to dedicate his practice of awakening by helping others, for them to awaken too. This memory comes forward as humanity has now reached the point where religion and the dogma that surrounds it crumbles. The dismantling of religions around the globe is one of the first steps to freedom for humans at this time. Once religion is released, everything else will crumble naturally and be reborn again. Caranna and Isiah. With our last memory of old, we move to the continent of Africa, where there continues to be simplicity that the entire world can learn from. Caranna was a hard-working woman, with Creole in her blood and passion in everything she set her eyes upon. Caranna was a mother of 7 children and lived in a community where the shamans were regularly asked for. Everything on the earth was utilized and cared for. Nothing was taken for granted. Caranna woke between 4 and 5 each morning and passed out with exhaustion at night with her children sleeping by her side. A few of Caranna's children had grown. They left the household, had jobs, and helped support the family when they could. The rest of her children went to school and helped their mother on the weekends. Caranna's days were filled with making baskets for the markets, preparing large batches of Creole food to sell, and on the side a bit of fortune-telling. The magic ways, Caranna would say. Caranna loved all the ways she was kept busy using her creative talents. She made sure all of her children knew they were loved. They were happy, fed, and cared for. They didn't have much, and Caranna preferred it that way. The less amount of stuff they all accumulated, the clearer their minds were, and the clearer she could see her visions to help others. It was on a damp morning after seeing her children go off to school that she was at the market. Caranna was preparing the chilies and other ingredients to go inside of the massive skillet over the fire. Caranna looked up and saw a younger man watching her. Caranna called him over. She had no time for lollygagging. She was matter-of-fact, called it like it was, and took no guff from anyone. As the young man approached, Caranna introduced herself and waited for the young man to speak. His name was Isiah, and he continued to watch Caranna work in fascination as her hands chopped and moved at lightning speed, stirring and creating the most delicious food he had ever smelled. Caranna knew something was off with this man, not in a bad way either. He seemed lost, confused, like he had nowhere to go. Caranna struck up a conversation with Isiah, asking him where he was from, where he was going, and what he was doing. Caranna had no filter. "I don't know," Isiah said. "What do you mean you don't know? You don't know any of it? Where you're from? Where you're going? What you're doing here? Nothing?" Caranna said with irritation in her voice. "No, I don't, Caranna. I don't remember anything. I was in a fog, and when I looked up, I saw you, doing what you're doing, and you waved me over." Isiah was calm when he talked, but looked out of place. It was as if he was seeing everything before him for the first time. Caranna pulled over a crate and asked Isiah to sit. She could feel people. She knew when they were lying, fibbing, and making a darn fool out of themselves, and this was not this time. She could feel Isiah's purity in essence. This was not like anyone she had ever encountered before. Caranna needed time to think and continue to prepare the food. She placed the last of the vegetables in the skillet to simmer. She knew she had to tap into her magic ways and find out about Isiah. Caranna asked to look at Isiah's hands. This was a way to make others think she was reading people's palms, but she wasn't doing that. This was a cover-up for information and visions to flood into her, seen into their futures. She could see who they are as a soul and what is of the utmost importance to them. Isiah held his hands forward as Caranna took a seat across from him. They were under a makeshift canopy of cloth, held up by 2 long poles. This provided them with a bit of shade under the blistering heat from the sun. Caranna took a breath and slowed down her breathing. She took another breath and closed her eyes. This is when the visions would normally come, and she could see what the person in front of her needed to know. Even though she knew every person could do this, all they needed to do was slow down and take their time. Caranna wasn't going to tell anyone this. Her magic ways were a nice bit of extra income that was easy for her to make. She knew every person could seek what they want to know, but everyone gives their power away and seeks the answers outside of themselves. A vision began to form in front of Caranna. There was light, so much light. Caranna began to weep softly. This had never happened to her before, seen this amount of light in a vision before, and the feeling that came with it. She was surrounded in complete peace. Caranna didn't even know this existed. Imagine feeling relaxed and multiplying this by 1,000,000, and then wrapped and cocooned in complete love. She continued to keep her eyes closed and looked further into what was coming forward. Caranna knew Isiah was closing his eyes too and connecting to the light. She didn't know how she knew this, she just did. Out of the light were many winged beings, thousands upon thousands of winged light beings that held the highest degree of purity, love, and kindness ever beseeched upon her. Hello, Caranna. It is a pleasure to connect with you this day. Caranna was speechless. This was Isiah's family. He was light itself. He was a winged being of light. Caranna, we are a team that has come through many dimensions to help humanity at this time. We sought you out as you have an ability that many have not opened up to as of yet. We ask for you to keep Isiah protected for a time, as he will help anchor the light into your continent. There have been too many atrocities against your people for centuries, and there continues to be disillusionment about the color of people's skin on your planet. Not everyone has awoken to see that you are all human, one species, no matter the color, sex, or way each person may differ. You already know this, Caranna. That is why we seek you out. Isiah holds a great amount of power in his being and through his vessel. We will channel the light into your continent for as long as Isiah can be here. This will not take months or years, only a matter of days, 7 days and 7 nights to be exact. It is within this time that the energy and light will ripple through your planet. With this comes great change. Know also that Isiah is not the only one that is contributing at this time. Strategically, many beings have come down in placement to anchor the light and to do the same as Isiah. Many others surround your planet in light to assist humanity. There are even humans that have awoken to their mission to aid their species through this shift of change and for the greater good of all. There are many beings that are collaborating for this monumental shift of change. Caranna, this is part of your mission, to assist Isiah at this time and to keep him safe from harm, while others seek to distinguish his light. Time is of the essence. We also want you to know that you and your children will not be in any danger. When others seek to harm Isiah, his task will be accomplished and the mission complete. We have been planning this for millennia. Caranna was speechless and opened her eyes. The vision vanished and dissolved. Isiah was smiling back at Caranna. Thank you, Caranna. I now remember what I am, where I'm from, and why I am here. Let's get to work, shall we? Isiah said with a twinkle in his eye. Isiah rose and moved his crate towards the back of the tent. He asked Caranna to ignore him as he would now move into long periods of meditation, while she continued to do her work. Caranna was still dumbfounded by what she had just seen. Isiah was a being of light in human form. Caranna got up from her crate and began to check on her dish. She prepared her materials for the basket weaving and sat down once again on her crate, waiting for the customers. Caranna would glance back at Isiah every once in a while, checking on him and making sure he was all right. He remained seated, with his eyes closed, and he looked like he was peacefully sleeping upright. Caranna knew better. He was anchoring in the light. Caranna began to feel the change in the air a while back when more people began to be open to her magic ways. She found there was less of a need to hide her magic than even a few years ago. As Caranna started to weave her baskets, many thoughts entered her mind. How in the heck do you erase or heal centuries of atrocities to her people of color for the death, enslavement, rape, and torture that so many endured? This horrific treatment had scarred generation after generation. How is the light to come in and change any of what took place? How are humans to see each other as one species and not be separate from one another? These questions and many more plagued Caranna's mind as she continued to weave and provide her dishes to paying customers. Before she knew it, it was time to pack up and head home. She needed to be home for her children and prepare dinner for their hungry bellies. Isiah had risen from hours of meditation, and Caranna offered him the last bowl of her Creole food. Once Isiah finished, he offered her his assistance with taking down the makeshift tent and helped her carry all of her supplies home. Caranna knew the understanding was that Isiah would stay with her for the next week. Once she explained to her children what her vision was, she knew they would understand too. What was looking after one more soul gonna do? Yes, there was nowhere for Isiah to sleep, but they would make do. At least he would have a roof over his head and food in his belly. Isiah and Caranna walked slowly back to her hut in the village. Isiah was a man of little words. He was silent as they walked together, but his eyes said a different story. Isiah's eyes lit up with what he saw. Cows were walking down the street, their bells around their necks clanging away. Women had baskets or jugs of water on their heads as they walked from village to village. And some of the women had their babies wrapped in a piece of cloth strapped to their backs. Isiah was in deep contemplation as he struggled to see the balance that women and men had. In Isiah's eyes, the women didn't stop. They worked, took care of their families, and prepared food and meals. He witnessed some of the men working, but not to the extent of the women. Isiah didn't know if this happened just in this area or all around this world, but he knew there was an imbalance. This had taken a toll on this species, on both sides, the women and the men. Isiah saw very clearly that the majority of women were the nurturers, the caretakers, and their roles were always on. He saw the majority of men as laborers, and the need to be looked after by the women after their daily work was done. This was not true for the women, though. Isiah could not understand why there was such a discrepancy, unless this went back for centuries. Isiah knew his time in meditation would provide him with the answers that he sought. Isiah and Caranna made it back to her hut. Her children were already home, on the floor doing their homework, giggling with one another. Caranna stepped inside and scooped up her babies, one by one, giving them a kiss and squeeze. She made sure to look each of her children in the eyes and ask how their day was, and give them the time to tell their stories and be heard. Caranna listened to each one of them as she prepared their dinner. This did take time to go through each child and listen, really listen. Her children also knew not to take advantage of their mama's time with any whining or complaining. They worked together as a team. Isiah was introduced to the family and kept to himself, sitting quietly in the corner. Some of the children did not remember a man ever being in their home before. Their father had died after their last sibling was born, and many of the young ones do not have any memory of him. It was only after a few minutes that the children let their curiosity get the better of them, and they began to fire questions at Isiah. The children were drawn to him like a moth to a flame. They could feel his light and kindness. His energy was very different from their mamas, who blew in like a hurricane with her stories and business of taking care of everybody. Isiah was peaceful, and once the children had surrounded him in a circle, he began to tell his stories of where he was from. Caranna felt the pull to join them and left the cooking for now. It wasn't every day that you had the chance to listen to a being of light and have one in your own home. With that, she wiped her hands on a cloth and scooted next to one of her babies, placing them on her lap. Isiah began his story. Where I am from is a place of crystal mountains. The energy is very high in this realm. You can walk on the crystals, and they come in many different shapes and sizes. The crystals communicate with energy, and there are certain ones that you can meditate on, and others that will heal you. In our land, the crystals began to crack and lose their luster and brilliance. We wanted to find the source of what was taking place. There was a group of us that meditated many days and nights on the root of this issue, and it came down to one planet named Earth. We had never heard of this planet before, as this was not in our realm or conscious mind. We found Earth as being the source of a ripple effect in the web of energy that affected all life in this universe. Our crystals were being impacted with the imbalance of the dark. The scales had tipped in their favor for too long. We discussed many options to help planet Earth, as this was the only way to then help our crystals and our home. This is when we heard the call from the web of energy to help this planet. Just as an insect enters the web, and the spider knows something is there from the vibration and movement on the web, we too felt the vibration in the web of consciousness. Our plan was formed to anchor in the light for stabilization and a correction of the ways back to balance once more. Caranna placed a pause on Isiah's tail and asked for all hands on deck with dinner. She wanted to get back to Isiah's story, but she knew if she didn't feed her babies, there would be hunger pains coming soon. Everyone took a break and helped chop, stir, and get the dishes ready for their meal. Isiah watched Caranna's family, not trusting himself in the hustle and bustle of their tiny kitchen. When everyone finished their meal and cleaned the dishes, Isiah sat back down again and began to speak. We knew we had to make the journey to Earth. It would take a very long time to get here, and there would be many others that would help as well. I volunteered to be an anchor, for my family to channel and anchor the light through me into the earth. Other members of my family are placed in other areas of Earth as well. As a family unit, much like your own, we work well together when we collaborate. We are stronger when we work together. This piece of wisdom from Isiah, this simple sentence, had Caranna reeling. She could feel this deep within her soul. Caranna could feel the sincerity and purity of Isiah's words, his intentions, and how truthful his wisdom was. Isiah stopped here and looked at Caranna. She knew it was time for her babies to go to bed from their sleepy yawns. Caranna's children slowly got up with their big stretches and turned in to get ready for bed. Isiah remained seated, and Caranna knew he had to get to work. Once the children were sleeping, Isiah went into another deep meditation and would remain there for the duration of the night. This routine carried forward for the rest of Isiah's stay with Caranna and her family. Isiah would spend each day with Caranna at the market, anchoring the light into this part of the world, and once again throughout the night. Isiah did not sleep like humans did, for he wasn't human. The illusion was there for others to believe he was. However, he would be able to dissipate and go back into his natural form after his mission was complete. He was grateful to have such a force of a woman to look out for him and shelter Isiah from the elements. Her cooking was also one to be cherished. Isiah would hold this memory of being with Caranna and her family for years to come. On the 8th morning, Isiah, Caranna, and her children knew it was time for Isiah to go back to his family. They didn't know how this would happen or what their day entailed. They only knew their hearts were heavy, for they had loved their time with Isiah. He was a wonderful being of light. Wherever you went, you felt embraced in his love. Nothing could replace Isiah and what he meant to Caranna and her family. Isiah gathered the children and hugged each child, just as he had observed Caranna do. Isiah looked into each one of their eyes and thanked them for opening their home to him, allowing their beautiful friendship to form. The children were crying as Isiah said goodbye, and Caranna led him out of her home with a breaking heart. Isiah and Caranna embraced, and Isiah took hold of Caranna's hands. He looked Caranna in her eyes and said, "Caranna, the morning that I arrived on Earth, you were there, welcoming and waving me over. You looked into who I was and why I am here, and in doing so, I was lifted out of the fog, and my mission became clear once again. I have a gift for you, and it would be an honor to beseech this gift to you if you so desire." Caranna, who was crying, nodded her head yes in silence. Isiah closed his eyes and took a deep breath, just as Caranna had done when they first met. He knew Caranna was closing her eyes as well. A vision came forward of a little girl. This little girl was Caranna. Caranna was full of life, helping others and standing on her own 2 feet. She was a spitfire. The vision continued with her growing up and the wedding to her husband. Isiah felt the love that they shared and saw the birth of their children. Isiah knew the death of her beloved almost killed her. After her husband's death, Caranna drew from an inner strength that she didn't know she had, and continued forward for the sake of her babies. This was a contract that she signed for Caranna to find her inner strength and forge ahead. The vision continued with her children looking after her, and Caranna sharing magnificent stories with her grandbabies. She loved her life on Earth, and the vision came to a close. Isiah and Caranna were both crying now. It was an honor for Isiah to see Caranna's life, and it was a gift for Caranna to see her future in such a way. Isiah let go of Caranna's hands, and they embraced, hugging and laughing together. Isiah whispered in Caranna's ear, "Thank you, Caranna. On behalf of my family, our home, the crystals, and the entire web of consciousness, you played an important role, and we are grateful." Caranna looked up at Isiah and could see he was beginning to fade before her eyes. Before he disappeared completely, she said, "Thank you, Isiah. It was an honor, my friend." And she bowed down to him with her hands over her heart. Isiah smiled and was gone. Caranna wept and fell to the ground sobbing. This felt like the death of her husband all over again. This time, however, she knew it was going to be different. She was shown the outcome of her life and her children's, and the many wonderful times that lay ahead. She also knew in her heart not to rely on what she saw. Yes, it was a wonderful gift, but she also knew timelines were ever-changing. The only thing you could rely on was this moment, right here and right now. She brushed herself off and went into her home. Caranna and her children were not going to be sad that Isiah was gone, as his mission was now complete. This was a time to be celebrated. And when she popped her head inside, the children were surrounding something in awe. It was a crystal, the size of her skillet, in an upright position. Caranna got closer and knew this was a gift from Isiah to her and her children. This crystal would continue to communicate between Isiah and her family for generations to come. Caranna laughed and laughed. It was all so simple and complex, all at the same time. Humans could make such a fuss out of their circumstances and their situations. Emotions can arise at the drop of a hat and get out of control quickly. Yet if each human just took the time to look within, this would be the ultimate game changer in their lives for harmony, peace, and connection. This connection is with the web of consciousness, knowing there is a greater awareness beyond Earth. Many incredible beings with their own stories of knowledge and wisdom want to help humans and all life within the universe. Caranna and her children have made many connections with Isiah and his family after Isiah left Earth, and their crystal remains within the family to this day. They cherish this gift and keep it to themselves until the majority of humans awaken. Final notes. We thank you, the listener, for opening your heart and soul to these stories of old. It has been an honor to share these stories and bring back what is rightfully yours, Earth's hidden memories. In the next and final book, we move into the many worlds beyond Earth. These stories are memories from galactic species that want to share what they have learned through their evolution to help humanity now. Once again, it has been our privilege to connect with you in this way. We are the Divine Light Collective.